The wind howled through the empty parking lot, biting at Tom's skin as he fumbled with his keys. Another long shift at the animal shelter had left him exhausted, and the freezing December air only made it worse. His breath came out in white puffs as he trudged toward his car, shoulders hunched against the cold. Then he heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it. A whimper, weak, desperate. Tom froze. His eyes scanned the darkness behind the shelter, where the dim glow of his phone flashlight barely reached. There, tied to a metal post with a frayed rope, was a German shepherd. The dog's ribs stuck out sharply under his matted fur, his body trembling violently. His eyes, though filled with fear, held something else. A flicker of hope. Tom's chest tightened. Shelter policy said strays had to be processed, evaluated, and, if deemed too damaged, put down. But looking at this dog, he knew what would happen if he followed the rules. With numb fingers, he untied the rope. The dog didn't growl or snap. He just stared, breathing ragged. "I can't leave you here," Tom whispered, wrapping his thin jacket around the shivering animal. The dog was lighter than he expected, as if his body had given up. As he carried him to the car, one thought echoed in his mind. This changes everything. Tom's apartment was small, barely enough for one person, but he didn't care. He laid the German shepherd on an old blanket near the radiator, watching as the dog curled into himself, still shivering. His fur was caked with dirt, and deep scars ran along his sides, some old, some fresh. "Who did this to you?" Tom thought, his stomach twisting. He filled a bowl with warm water and set it down, but the dog only stared, too weak or too afraid to drink. The shelter would be looking for this dog. Strays had to be reported within 24 hours, and Tom had just broken every rule by taking him. If they found out, he'd lose his job. Worse, if the dog was labeled aggressive or too damaged, they'd put him down. Tom clenched his fists. He couldn't let that happen. He grabbed his phone, hesitating before dialing Lisa, his coworker and only real friend at the shelter. She picked up on the third ring. "Tom, it's midnight. I need your help," he said, voice low. "There's a dog, a German shepherd. Someone left him tied behind the shelter. He's in bad shape." A pause. Then Lisa sighed. "You took him, didn't you?" Tom didn't answer. He didn't have to. "You know the rules, Tom. If Davis finds out—" "I know," he snapped, then softened. "But Lisa, you should see him. He's terrified. If I bring him in, they'll euthanize him. I can't do that." Another long silence. Then, finally, Lisa muttered, "Fine. But you didn't call me and I don't know anything. And for God's sake, don't let anyone see him." Tom exhaled in relief. He turned back to the dog, who was now watching him with wary eyes. "You're safe now," he murmured, though he wasn't sure the dog believed him. That night, Tom slept on the couch, waking every few hours to check on the dog. By morning, the water bowl was empty, and the dog was licking his lips nervously. Progress. But as Tom reached out to pet him, the dog flinched, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Tom froze. "Okay, no touching yet, got it." He spent the day trying to earn the dog's trust. Soft words, slow movements, pieces of chicken left just close enough for the dog to snatch and retreat. By evening, the growling had stopped, but the fear in the dog's eyes remained. Then Tom noticed something. As he moved to grab a blanket, the dog's gaze locked onto his hands, his body tensing. Not just fear, recognition, like he'd been hit before. Tom's blood ran cold. This wasn't just neglect, this was abuse. He knelt down, keeping his voice gentle. "What did they do to you, huh?" The dog didn't answer. But for the first time, when Tom reached out, The dog didn't pull away. That small victory shattered when Tom's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You have something that belongs to me." Tom's breath caught. Below the text was a photo of the German Shepherd, tied to the same post taken days ago. Someone was looking for him, and they weren't asking nicely. The message burned in Tom's mind as he stared at the phone screen, his fingers trembling slightly against the device. The photo was unmistakable, the same German Shepherd, the same post, but in the image the dog looked even worse, his eyes hollow with starvation and his fur matted with what might have been blood. The timestamp showed it was taken just 3 days before Tom found him. Someone had been keeping track. Someone wanted this dog back. Tom quickly typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "You know who. And you know what happens to thieves." A cold sweat broke across Tom's neck. He looked over at the dog, Rex, he'd started calling him in his mind, who was now cautiously chewing on a piece of cooked chicken Tom had left nearby. The dog's ears twitched at every sound, his body still tense with the memory of pain. Those scars weren't from accidents. The circular burns along his ribs, the jagged marks near his hind legs, these were deliberate. Someone had tortured this animal. The apartment suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. Tom paced the length of the tiny living room, running scenarios through his head. He could report the threat to the police, but what would he say? That he'd taken a stray dog from his workplace without permission? That might get Rex taken away faster than the mysterious texter could. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Lisa. "Tom, you need to get here now. Davis is tearing the place apart looking for that dog." Someone tipped him off. Tom's stomach dropped. He glanced at Rex, who had finally settled into an uneasy sleep near the radiator, his breathing still shallow but steadier than before. Leaving him alone wasn't an option, but taking him to the shelter would be a death sentence. Making a split-second decision, Tom grabbed his thickest coat and knelt beside Rex. "We need to go, boy," he whispered, carefully sliding a makeshift leash around the dog's neck. Rex startled awake but didn't resist. A small miracle. The cold outside was brutal, the wind cutting through Tom's jacket as he hurried Rex to his car. The dog moved hesitantly, his paws unsteady on the icy pavement. Every shadow seemed to make him flinch. Every car backfire sending tremors through his body. Tom kept up a steady stream of quiet reassurance, though his own nerves were frayed. As he opened the car door, a dark pickup truck rolled slowly past, its windows tinted black. Tom's breath caught in his throat. The truck paused for a heartbeat too long before continuing down the street. Was that them? Had they already found him? Tom threw the car into gear and pulled away, his rearview mirror constantly checking for followers. He took a circuitous route to the shelter, doubling back twice to be sure. Rex panted in the passenger seat, his eyes darting nervously at every turn. The shelter's parking lot was chaos when they arrived. Davis's SUV was parked haphazardly near the entrance, the front doors wide open despite the freezing temperatures. Tom parked around back, near the dumpsters where the cameras didn't reach. "Stay here," he told Rex, cracking the windows slightly before hurrying inside. The scene inside was worse than he imagined. Davis stood red-faced in the center of the lobby, yelling at a cowering intern. Filing cabinets hung open, papers strewn everywhere. The kennel area echoed with distressed barks from the unsettled animals. Lisa spotted Tom first, her eyes widening in alarm. She sidled up to him, her voice a hissed whisper. "What are you doing here? Davis has been screaming about that German Shepherd for an hour. Says someone saw you take it." Tom's mouth went dry. Who told him? Anonymous call, but Tom... Lisa's face was grim. They didn't just say you took the dog, they said you stole a valuable animal, that it was some kind of trained fighter. The words hit Tom like a physical blow. His mind raced back to Rex's scars, his flinching at raised hands, the way he'd growled not in anger, but in terrified anticipation of pain. Before he could respond, Davis's voice boomed across the room. "Tom, my office, now." The walk to Davis's office felt like marching to the gallows. The older man slammed the door behind them, his face purple with rage. "Where is it?" Tom feigned confusion. "Where's what?" "Don't play stupid." Davis slammed his fist on the desk. "That German shepherd. The one you took from behind the shelter. It belongs to Derek Marshall, and he wants it back." The name meant nothing to Tom, but the way Davis said it, with a mix of fear and respect, told him everything he needed to know. "I don't know what you're talking about," Tom said, his voice steadier than he felt. Davis leaned in close, his breath reeking of coffee and cigarettes. "Listen carefully, boy. Derek isn't someone you mess with. That dog is worth thousands to him. You bring it back now. Maybe he lets you walk away. You don't." He let the threat hang. Tom's mind raced. He thought of Rex's trusting eyes when he'd finally taken food from his hand. The way the dog had stopped growling when Tom spoke softly. The scars that told a story of unimaginable cruelty. "I don't have your dog," Tom said evenly. Davis studied him for a long moment, then reached into his desk drawer. Tom tensed, expecting a weapon, but instead the man pulled out a file. He tossed it on the desk. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Dogs in fighting rings, dogs with injuries far worse than Rex's, and in several shots a hulking man with a shaved head and spiderweb tattoos crawling up his neck. Derek, presumably. "These are from last year's raid," Davis said quietly. "They got nothing on him. He's connected, Tom. The kind of connected that makes problems disappear." He tapped one photo where Derek stood smiling beside a bloodied pit bull. That shepherd of his, undefeated in 7 matches. Then it got soft, started refusing to fight. Derek was retraining it. Tom's vision swam with rage. He forced himself to breathe. Davis misread his silence. "Smart boy, now where's the dog?" Tom stood abruptly. "Like I said, I don't know." He turned to leave, but Davis's next words stopped him cold. "Then you'd better hope Derek believes that when he comes looking." As Tom walked back to his car, his hand shook, not from the cold, but from fury. Rex lifted his head when Tom opened the door, his tail giving a tentative wag. Tom stroked the dog's head gently. "I won't let them take you," he promised. But even as he said it, he knew the danger was just beginning. Because if Derek was who Davis said he was, he wouldn't stop at threats. And Tom had just made himself, and Rex, targets. The car heater blasted stale warm air as Tom navigated the icy back roads, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Rex panted softly in the passenger seat, his nose leaving foggy smudges on the window as he watched the passing trees with nervous curiosity. Every few minutes, Tom's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, searching for headlights that might be following them. The shelter was no longer safe. His apartment wasn't safe. And now, with Davis involved, Tom wasn't sure anywhere would be safe. His phone buzzed insistently in the cup holder. Lisa calling for the 3rd time in 20 minutes. Tom hesitated before answering on speaker. "I can't talk long." Lisa's voice came through in a rushed whisper. "Tom, you need to listen carefully. Davis just got off the phone with someone. I think it was Derek. They know you took Rex. They're coming for you." A pause, then quieter. "They have your address." Tom's stomach twisted. He glanced at Rex, who had turned his attention to him, ears pricked forward as if sensing the tension. How much time do I have? I don't know. Minutes, maybe. Davis sent someone to follow you when you left, but you disappeared too fast. Lisa's voice cracked. Tom, this guy Derek, he's not just some backyard dogfighter. He's connected to some really bad people. The cops have been trying to nail him for years. The headlights of an approaching truck made Tom's breath catch. He slumped slightly in his seat as it passed, but the momentary relief vanished when Lisa spoke again. There's more. That German shepherd, Rex? He wasn't just one of Derek's fighters, he was his champion. Undefeated until, Lisa hesitated, until he refused to kill another dog in the ring. Derek took it personally. The injuries, they weren't just punishment, they were a lesson. Tom's free hand found its way to Rex's neck, fingers brushing the raised scars there. The dog leaned into the touch, a gesture of trust that made Tom's throat tighten. I won't let him get hurt again. Then you need to disappear, Lisa said urgently. Take back roads, don't use credit cards, and for God's sake, ditch your phone. They can track it. As if on cue, Tom's screen lit up with an unknown number. The same one that had texted earlier. His blood ran cold. They're calling me. Don't answer, Tom, listen. I have a cousin who runs an animal sanctuary up near Pine Ridge. It's off-grid, no one knows about it except family. I'll text you directions, then destroy my phone. Lisa's voice dropped to a whisper. Get there, and you might just make it out of this alive. The call disconnected just as Tom's phone started ringing again, the shrill tone cutting through the car like a knife. Rex whined softly, pressing closer to Tom's side. With a sudden decision, Tom rolled down the window and hurled the phone into the darkness. It shattered against the asphalt somewhere behind them, the ringing cutting off abruptly. For the first time, the reality of his situation truly hit him. He was now a fugitive, from the law, from a criminal organization, from everything he'd ever known. And all for a dog he'd met barely 48 hours ago. Yet, when he looked at Rex, at the way the dog watched him with those deep, knowing eyes, Tom felt no regret. Only determination. The road ahead was dark, the snow beginning to fall heavier now. Somewhere out there, men with violence in their hearts were searching for them. But for tonight, just for tonight, they were free. Tom reached into the back seat for the duffel bag he'd hastily packed. Clothes, cash, dog food stolen from the shelter. Not much, but enough to start. He turned onto an unmarked dirt road, the car bouncing over ruts as they plunged deeper into the woods. Rex stood suddenly, his body tense as he stared out the windshield. His ears swiveled forward, then back, a low growl building in his chest. What is it, boy? Tom slowed the car, peering through the snow-speckled windshield. Then he saw them, tire tracks cutting sharply off the main road. Fresh ones. Someone was already ahead of them. The tire tracks cut through the fresh powder like scars, leading down the narrow forest service road toward what should have been their sanctuary. Tom killed the engine and sat in the sudden silence, listening to the tick of cooling metal and Rex's anxious panting. His fingers tightened on the steering wheel as he strained to see through the swirling snow. No taillights, no movement, just those ominous tracks disappearing into the darkness. Someone had come this way recently, someone who shouldn't have known about this place. Rex's growl deepened, his body vibrating with tension as he stared into the trees. Then Tom saw it. A flicker of movement near the tree line, a shadow detaching itself from the pines, the glint of something metallic. Tom's blood turned to ice. They'd been found. He threw the car into reverse just as the first gunshot shattered the night. The rear window exploded inward in a shower of glass as Tom cranked the wheel, the car skidding sideways on the icy road. Rex barked wildly, claws scrabbling for purchase on the seats, as another bullet punched through the door panel with a dull thunk. Down, Rex! Get down! Tom shoved the dog to the floorboards as he stomped on the gas. The car fishtailed violently before finding traction, shooting backward down the mountain road. Trees flashed, passed in the headlights as Tom fought the wheel, his heart hammering against his ribs. He couldn't see their attackers anymore, just the dark road unwinding behind them, but he knew they'd be coming. The car hit a pothole with a bone-jarring impact, the rear bumper scraping against the embankment. Tom swore and spun the wheel, barely avoiding a sheer drop-off. No time to think, no time to plan. Just run. Rex whined from the footwell, his body pressed tight against Tom's legs. The dog's breathing came in quick, panicked bursts, but he stayed down like he'd been told, like he'd been trained to obey even in the middle of chaos. That thought sent a fresh wave of anger through Tom. What had they done to this animal to make him so compliant even in the face of gunfire? A pair of headlights flared to life farther up the road. Tom's stomach dropped. They'd blocked the exit. Trapped. Okay, new plan, he muttered through clenched teeth. The car skidded to a stop as Tom threw it into drive and yanked the wheel hard left, plunging off-road into the trees. Branches screeched against the paint as they bounced over roots and rocks, the suspension groaning in protest. Rex yelped as they hit a particularly deep rut, his body slamming against the door. Tom risked a glance in the mirror. The headlights were turning, coming after them. But the forest grew denser ahead, the trees closing in like a living barrier. They wouldn't make it much farther like this. Then he saw it. An old logging trail cutting sharply to the right, nearly invisible beneath the fresh snow. Tom wrenched the wheel, the car sliding sideways before the tires caught. The pursuing headlights vanished behind a wall of pines as they shot down the narrow path, the forest swallowing them whole. 200 yards, 300. The engine screamed in protest as they climbed. Then, without warning, the trail ended at a rusted gate chained between two massive oaks. Tom slammed the brakes just in time, the car sliding to a stop inches from the barrier. His chest heaved as he stared at the chain, then at the dark woods surrounding them. No way forward, no time to go back. Rex lifted his head, ears pricked toward something Tom couldn't hear. Then the dog did something unexpected. He nudged the door handle with his nose and whined urgently. "You want out?" Tom hesitated only a second before popping the locks. Rex bolted into the snow, immediately turning to look back at Tom, his breath steaming in the cold air. The message was clear. Follow me. Another gunshot echoed through the trees, much closer now. Decision made. Tom grabbed the duffel bag and plunged after Rex into the darkness. The dog moved with surprising sure-footedness through the snow, his body low as he zigzagged between trees. Tom stumbled after him, his boots sinking deep with every step. Behind them, car doors slammed. Voices shouted. Flashlight beams cut through the trees like prison searchlights. Rex suddenly veered left, disappearing behind a tangle of fallen timber. Tom scrambled after him, his fingers numb with cold as he pulled himself over the rotting logs. Then he saw what Rex had found, a dark opening in the hillside, half hidden by brush. A cave. Or maybe an old mine shaft. The dog waited at the entrance, his eyes reflecting the faint moonlight. As Tom dropped to his knees to crawl inside, Rex licked his face once, a quick, desperate gesture that might have been gratitude or fear or both. The space inside was cramped and reeked of damp earth, but it was shelter. Tom pulled Rex close as they huddled in the blackness, listening to the shouts outside grow louder, then fade as their pursuers moved past. Silence fell. Then, from somewhere terrifyingly close, a voice muttered, "Check the car. They can't have gone far." Rex's body tensed against Tom's. Outside, snow crunched under heavy boots, coming closer. Tom held his breath and reached blindly in the dark until his fingers closed around a hefty stone. It wasn't much, but if it came down to it, he'd make it count. The footsteps stopped just outside the cave entrance. A flashlight beam swept across the opening, illuminating the dirt walls for one heart-stopping second before moving on. "They're not here," the voice called. "Keep searching east. Marshall wants that dog back by morning." As the voices faded, Tom exhaled shakily and pressed his forehead against Rex's. They'd gotten lucky. Too lucky. And dawn was still hours away. Somewhere out there in the frozen dark, Derek Marshall's men were still hunting. And Tom was starting to realize this wasn't just about a dog anymore. This was about revenge. The cave walls pressed in around them like a frozen tomb as Tom strained to hear any sound of the hunters outside. Rex lay pressed against his chest, the dog's rapid heartbeat thudding against Tom's ribs in sync with his own. Hours had passed since the voices faded, but neither dared move. The cold seeped into their bones, turning breath to mist and fingers to numb claws. Tom knew they couldn't stay here. Hypothermia would claim them before Derek's men did. But the forest beyond the cave mouth remained deathly quiet. Too quiet. Rex suddenly lifted his head, ears twitching toward the entrance. Before Tom could stop him, the dog wriggled free and crept forward, nose working the air. Then came the sound that made Tom's blood freeze. A whimper. Not human, not Rex. Another dog. Tom lunged silently to grab Rex's collar, but the German shepherd slipped through his fingers like a ghost, disappearing into the pre-dawn gloom. Cursing under his breath, Tom crawled after him, the frozen ground biting through his jeans. The forest was a monochrome wasteland of black trunks and white snow, the moon casting long, skeletal shadows. 20 yards from the cave, Rex stood frozen beside a snowdrift, his body rigid with tension. Then Tom saw it. A flash of movement beneath a fallen pine. A small, emaciated pit bull mix lay trapped under the branches, its ribs protruding like a xylophone of suffering. Fresh blood stained the snow around its hind leg where something, a bullet, a trap, had torn through muscle and fur. The pit bull's eyes rolled wildly when it spotted Tom, a weak growl bubbling from its throat. Rex did something extraordinary then. He lay down in the snow, belly exposed, and let out a soft, high-pitched whine, the universal canine signal of non-aggression. The pit bull's growl cut off abruptly. Its nostrils flared as it scented the air, then its entire body sagged in exhausted relief. Tom approached slowly, his hands visible. "Easy, girl," he murmured, though he couldn't tell the dog's gender. "Let me help." The pit bull didn't resist as he lifted the pine branch, its breathing shallow and rapid. Up close, the injuries were worse. Not just the leg wound, but old burns along its flank forming a crude pattern. Numbers, like livestock branding. A sudden crunch of snow made Tom whirl around. Rex spun too, teeth bared, but it wasn't Derek's men. A woman stood 10 feet away, her shotgun trained squarely on Tom's chest. She was maybe 60, with wild gray hair escaping a woolen hat and eyes as sharp as flint. The collar of her oversized parka hid most of her face, but Tom could see the tremor in her arms, not from cold, but from barely contained rage. "You're him," she spat, "the shelter worker who stole Marshall's champion." Her gaze flicked to Rex, then to the wounded pit bull. The shotgun didn't waver. "That dog's worth more than your life, boy. They'll skin you alive for it." Tom slowly raised his hands, his mind racing. This wasn't one of Derek's people. She'd said they, not we, and she knew about the fighting ring. "I'm not giving him back. he said, voice steadier than he felt. "And I'm not letting this one die either." He nodded to the pit bull, whose breathing was growing more labored by the second. The woman's eyes narrowed. For a long, terrible moment, the only sound was the pit bull's whimpers and the distant cry of a crow. Then, with a suddenness that made Tom flinch, she lowered the shotgun. "Then we best move," she growled, shrugging off her pack. "Dawn's coming, and so are they." She tossed Tom a roll of bandages before kneeling beside the pit bull, her hands surprisingly gentle as she examined the wound. "Name's Martha, and if you want to live through the day, you'll do exactly as I say." Tom's fingers fumbled with the bandages as realization dawned. This was Lisa's cousin, the one who ran the secret sanctuary, which meant the pit bull wasn't just some stray, it was an escapee. Martha worked quickly, wrapping the dog's leg with practiced efficiency. "This is number 7, she muttered, more to herself than Tom. "Which means the others are out here too. Damn fools raided the kennels last night when Marshall's men came sniffing around." She jerked her chin toward Rex. "Smart of you to run when you did. They hit your apartment an hour after you left." Tom's stomach lurched. His apartment, his life, gone. But there was no time to process that now. Martha was already hoisting the pit bull into her arms with a grunt, her breath puffing in the cold air. "We've got maybe 30 minutes before they pick up our trail again. There's a storm shelter half a mile northeast. We get there, we live. We don't." She didn't need to finish. Rex pressed against Tom's leg as they followed Martha through the trees, the pit bull's blood dripping a sporadic trail behind them. The forest seemed to hold its breath around them, the snow muffling their footsteps. Every shadow looked like a waiting gunman. Every creak of branches sounded like a cocking rifle. Then, from somewhere frighteningly close, a two-way radio crackled to life. "East perimeter clear, moving to Sector 4. Martha froze, her eyes locking with Tom's. Sector 4, exactly where they were headed. The radio crackled again. "Boss says double the bounty if they find the shepherd alive, wants to make an example of it." Tom lowered the tire iron slightly. "Start from the beginning. Who are you?" "Emma." She wiped her nose with a filthy sleeve. "I volunteer at Martha's place. When Derek's men raided last night, we managed to get 7 dogs out through the tunnels before they breached the fences. Martha stayed behind to hold them off while I led the dogs into the woods." Her gaze flicked to number 7. "We got separated during the chase. I thought they'd all been caught." The pieces clicked together in Tom's mind. The numbers, the brands. These weren't just fighting dogs. They were inventory. Derek's prize champions, each marked like cattle. And now he was rounding them up. Emma crawled fully out of the vent, wincing as she put weight on her left ankle. "Martha told me where to find you if things went bad. She said you had Rex, the one dog Derek wants more than anything." Her eyes found the German shepherd, widening slightly. "So it's true. You really did steal his undefeated champion." Rex's ears flattened at the word champion, his body tensing as if preparing for a blow. Tom rested a hand on his head, feeling the tremors running through the dog's body. "He's not a champion. He's a victim." Emma nodded grimly. She reached into her pocket again and pulled out a crumpled photograph. "Martha said to show you this if you didn't believe me." The photo showed a younger Martha standing beside a handsome man with kind eyes, their arms around each other's shoulders. Between them sat a German shepherd puppy with one ear flopped endearingly to the side. Even through the faded ink, Tom recognized those intelligent eyes. "That's Rex," Emma whispered. "Or what Derek renamed him. Martha and her brother bred him. Derek stole him 2 years ago when he burned their original shelter to the ground. Her brother didn't make it out. The floor seemed to tilt under Tom's feet. Rex wasn't just some random fighting dog, he was Martha's stolen family. And Derek hadn't just taken him, he'd destroyed lives to do it. A sudden banging from above made them all jump. Heavy footsteps crossed the bunker's ceiling, followed by the static crackle of a radio. "Search the outbuildings. Marshall wants every inch of this place turned inside out." Emma's face went pale. "They found us." Tom's mind raced. The vent was too small for Rex and the injured pit bull. The door was electronically locked, but it wouldn't hold against determined assault. They were trapped. Then Rex did something extraordinary. He stepped forward and licked Emma's hand once, decisively, before turning to the bunker's back wall. His nails clicked against the concrete as he sniffed along the baseboard, stopping near an unmarked section. He looked back at Tom and whined, pawing insistently at the wall. Emma's breath caught. The old escape tunnel. She scrambled to her feet, running her hands over the wall where Rex indicated. "Martha mentioned it, but I thought—" Her fingers found a nearly invisible seam. "Here, help me push." Tom joined her, throwing his weight against the wall. For one heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groan of long unused mechanisms, a section of concrete swung inward, revealing a dark passageway barely large enough to crawl through. The smell of damp earth and mildew wafted out, mixed with something else, the distinct scent of wet dog. More banging sounded from above, closer now. A voice shouted, "Check for basements!" They've got to be here somewhere. Tom didn't hesitate. He scooped up number 7, wincing as the dog yelped in pain. "Go," he ordered Emma. "Take Rex and get help." Emma shook her head violently. "I'm not leaving you." "You have to." Tom shoved the photo into her hand. "Find Lisa. Tell her everything. And Emma—" He met her terrified gaze squarely. "Don't let them get Rex again." Rex whined, pressing against Tom's legs, refusing to follow Emma into the tunnel. His eyes pleaded as clearly as words, "Don't make me leave you." The first gunshot against the bunker door decided it. The electronic lock sparked violently, failing. Tom gave Rex one last desperate shove toward the tunnel. "Go!" Emma grabbed Rex's collar, tears streaming down her face as she pulled him into the darkness. The last thing Tom saw before swinging the hidden door shut was Rex's panicked eyes staring back at him, the dog fighting against Emma's grip with all his strength. Then darkness. Silence. Alone with the wounded pit bull, and the certain knowledge that Derek's men would be through that door in seconds. Tom picked up the tire iron again, positioning himself between number 7 and the entrance. His hands shook, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "Come and get me, you bastards." The bunker door exploded inward. The bunker door crashed open with a deafening boom, splinters of wood and concrete dust exploding inward as flashlight beams cut through the darkness like prison searchlights. Tom shielded number 7 with his body, the tire iron raised in, shaking hands as silhouettes poured through the doorway. 3 men, maybe 4, their faces obscured by ski masks but their weapons gleaming in the dim emergency lighting. The lead man's boot connected with Tom's ribs before he could react, sending him sprawling across the concrete floor with a gasp of pain. The tire iron clattered out of reach as strong hands yanked him upright, slamming him against the wall hard enough to make his vision swim. "Where is it?" The voice was muffled by the mask but brimming with barely contained violence. The man shook Tom like a rag doll, his gloved fingers digging into Tom's collarbone. "Where's the damn dog?" Tom spat blood onto the man's boots, his ribs screaming with every breath. gone. The punch came without warning, a hammer blow to the kidney that dropped Tom to his knees. Through the haze of pain, he saw number 7 trying to drag itself toward him, the pit bull's bandaged leg leaving smears of blood across the floor. One of the other men laughed and kicked the dog aside like a sack of garbage. "Boss ain't gonna like that," the leader growled, hauling Tom upright again. He ripped off his ski mask, revealing a face that might have been handsome if not for the cruelty twisting his features. A spiderweb tattoo crawled up his neck, Derek's lieutenant. "You know how much that shepherd's worth?" Undefeated in 7 fights before it turned soft, Derek had plans for that animal. His breath smelled of cigarettes and rotting meat. Plans you just ruined. Tom's vision cleared just enough to see the bunker's hidden door, still closed, no sign it had ever been opened. Rex was safe. For now. "Go to hell," he croaked. The man's smile showed too many teeth. "Not me, kid, you." He nodded to one of the others. "Load up the pit bull. Boss might still get some use out of it." As the man moved toward number 7, the leader leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "See? Derek's got this theory about traitors. Says the only way to make an example is to let the others watch what happens." He patted Tom's cheek mockingly. "Lucky for you, we found some of Martha's other strays hiding in the woods. You'll have a real audience." The words sent ice through Tom's veins. They'd caught more of the numbered dogs, maybe even Emma and Rex. His stomach lurched at the thought. But before he could react, a sharp blow to the back of his head sent the world spiraling into blackness. Consciousness returned in jagged fragments. The crunch of tires on gravel, the stench of sweat and wet dog, the bite of plastic zip ties around his wrists. Tom blinked against the late afternoon sunlight filtering through the van's dirty windows, his head pounding like a drum. Number 7 lay whimpering in a cage beside him, its nose pressed desperately against the bars. Beyond it, 2 more cages held unfamiliar dogs, a scarred Rottweiler with milky eyes and a trembling greyhound so thin its ribs looked ready to pierce its skin. Numbers 12 and 15, if the brands on their flanks were any indication. The van hit a pothole, jolting Tom's injured ribs and drawing a pained groan from his lips. One of the masked men turned from the passenger seat, grinning at his discomfort. "Enjoy the ride, hero. Almost showtime." Through the windshield, a sprawling compound came into view. Chain-link fences topped with razor wire, concrete kennels lining a central yard, and at the far end, a barn-like structure with its doors hanging open like a hungry mouth. The sight sent number 7 into a frenzy, the pit bull throwing itself against its cage with a terror that spoke of terrible memories. The van rolled to a stop in the compound center, where a dozen armed men stood waiting beside a makeshift platform. Hanging from the rafters above it was Martha, her arms stretched taut by ropes, her face swollen with bruises, but her eyes blazing with defiance. At the platform's base, 4 more cages held additional dogs, including one that made Tom's heart stop. Rex. The German shepherd paced his cage like a caged storm, his lips peeled back in a silent snarl every time one of the guards approached. His fur was matted with mud and what looked like blood, but his eyes were clear and furious. Emma was nowhere to be seen. The van doors flew open, and rough hands dragged Tom out into the fading light. The assembled men jeered as he was half carried, half dragged toward the platform, their voices blending into a cacophony of threats and laughter. Then, as if on some unseen signal, they fell silent. A man stepped from the shadows of the barn, tall and broad-shouldered, his shaved head gleaming under the floodlights. Derek Marshall moved with the casual confidence of someone who'd never been told no, his spiderweb tattoos crawling up his thick neck like vines. In one hand, he held a cattle prod, in the other, a length of chain. Well, well. Derek's voice was smoother than Tom expected, almost pleasant. The dog thief finally wakes up. He circled. Tom, like a shark, his boots kicking up dust. You cost me a lot of money, boy. That shepherd was my masterpiece. 7 fights, 7 kills. Then one day, he snapped his fingers. Gone soft, wouldn't so much as growl at the bait dogs. He stopped abruptly, leaning in until Tom could smell the whiskey on his breath. But you know what's funny? I think you broke him worse than I ever could. Tom spat at Derek's feet. He was never yours to break. Derek backhanded him hard enough to split his lip. Everything's mine, he corrected calmly, wiping his knuckles on his jeans. The dogs, the fights, even Martha here. He gestured to the suspended woman with the cattle prod. Been chasing her little rescue operation for years. Imagine my surprise when she pops up protecting my property. Martha lifted her head, her voice rasping but clear. Rex was my brother's dog, you murdering bastard. You'll burn for what you did. Derek laughed, a sound like gravel in a tin can. He strolled to Rex's cage and tapped the bars with the prod, sending sparks dancing. Rex growled low in his throat but didn't retreat, his eyes locked on Tom with desperate intensity. See that? Derek marveled. 2 days with you and he's got a spine again. Pity. He nodded to one of his men. Bring him out. Let's see how loyal he really is. The cage door screeched open. Rex didn't wait to be dragged. He bolted out like a shot, straight toward Tom. Derek let him come, smiling as the German shepherd skidded to a stop between them, his body tensed like a coiled spring. Good boy, Derek crooned, holding out a gloved hand. Remember who feeds you. Rex didn't move, didn't whimper, just stood there, blocking Derek's path to Tom, his tail stiff and high. Derek's smile faded. He raised the cattle prod. I said, come! The prod sparked to life with a sickening crackle. But before Derek could strike, Martha gave a piercing whistle from the platform. Rex's head snapped up. His ears pricked forward. And then he did something Tom had never seen before. He smiled. An actual, genuine, doggy smile, tongue lolling as if he'd just heard the best joke in the world. Derek hesitated, the prod lowering slightly. What the hell? The explosion rocked the compound before he could finish. A fireball erupted from the barn, sending men scrambling as burning debris rained down. Then another blast, this time from the front gate. And suddenly the air was full of shouting and gunfire, and the high, clear sound of police sirens. Derek whirled toward the chaos, his face a mask of disbelief. Cops? Who called the... Martha's boot caught him square in the jaw, dropping him like a sack of potatoes. She hadn't been tied at all. The ropes hung loose around her wrists, the knots clearly fake. As Derek hit the dirt, she swung down from the platform with surprising agility for someone her age, landing in a crouch beside Rex. About damn time, she muttered, producing a key from her pocket and freeing Tom's hands. Emma got through to Lisa. Lisa called in every favor she had with animal control and the state police. She nodded to the burning barn. That's the evidence going up. Vet records, fight tapes, breeding logs, Derek's whole operation. Tom rubbed his wrists, his head spinning. The dogs, already handled. Martha tossed him a set of bolt cutters as more explosions rocked the compound. Get the cages open. The ones that can run will find their way to safety. Rex barked sharply and took off toward number 7's cage, his teeth making quick work of the cheap lock. All around them, Derek's men were either fleeing or being tackled by swarming police officers. The Greyhound was the first to bolt when its cage opened, streaking across the compound like a phantom. The Rottweiler hesitated, then limped after it, pausing just once to lick Tom's hand in passing. Derek groaned, stirring at their feet. Martha planted a boot on his chest and reached for the cattle prod. "You know," she mused, "I always wondered what these things felt like." Tom left her to it, stumbling after Rex as the German Shepherd led him toward the compound's edge. The night air smelled of smoke and freedom, the flashing police lights painting everything in streaks of red and blue. They were almost to the tree line when a gunshot split the air. Rex yelped and went down hard, a dark stain spreading across his shoulder. Behind them, Derek stood swaying, a pistol clutched in his bloodied hand. His lips moved, but whatever he said was lost in the thunder of Martha's cattle prod connecting with his skull. Tom dropped to his knees beside Rex, his hands fluttering uselessly over the wound. The bullet had gone clean through, but the damage was bad. Rex's breathing came in ragged gasps, his eyes glazing with shock. Somewhere beyond the chaos, Tom heard an engine roar to life. A police van, maybe an ambulance. "Hold on, boy," he whispered, pressing his jacket to the wound. Rex's tail thumped weakly in the dirt. Just hold on. The last thing Tom saw before the medics reached them was Derek being dragged away in cuffs, his face a mask of fury as Martha spat at his feet. Then everything went black. The sterile white walls of the animal hospital blurred in and out of focus as Tom paced the waiting room, his boots leaving muddy prints on the linoleum. The clock above the reception desk ticked with agonizing slowness, each second stretching into eternity as he waited for news about Rex. The bullet wound hadn't looked fatal at first glance, but the way Rex had collapsed, the way his breathing had turned shallow and labored, Tom's hands clenched into fists at the memory. He should have seen Derek coming, should have protected him better. Across the room, Martha dozed fitfully in a plastic chair, her face still streaked with soot from the burning compound. The doctors had tried to treat her bruised ribs and split lip, but she'd refused until they'd taken Rex back first. "That dog's been through enough," she'd growled at the startled vet tech. Now, even in sleep, her fingers twitched toward the missing shotgun she'd carried for years. The double doors to the treatment area swung open, and Tom's heart leapt into his throat, but it was only Lisa, her usually neat ponytail frazzled and her scrubs splattered with what looked like blood. She carried 2 steaming paper cups, thrusting one toward Tom without ceremony. "Drink. You look like death." The coffee burned his tongue, but the heat grounded him. "Any news?" Lisa shook her head, sinking into the chair beside Martha. "Still in surgery. The bullet nicked an artery. They had to put him under to repair it." Her eyes flicked to Martha, then back to Tom, lowering her voice. "The police have Derek in custody, but there's a problem." Tom's stomach dropped. "What now?" "He's claiming Rex is his property, says he has papers proving it." Lisa's mouth twisted in disgust. "And technically, until the court sorts out the fighting ring charges, the law might side with him." The coffee cup crumpled in Tom's hand, scalding liquid dripping onto his jeans. He barely felt it. After everything, the chase through the woods, the bunker, Martha's sacrifice, Derek could still win? "We can't let that happen. You didn't see what Rex was like when I found him. What all those dogs were like. If he gets them back—" "I know." Lisa gripped his wrist, her fingers surprisingly strong. "That's why Martha and I have been working on a backup plan." She nodded toward the sleeping woman. "Turns out her brother really did breed Rex. We found the original AKC paperwork in a safe deposit box yesterday, but—" She hesitated. "There's a catch." Before she could explain, Martha snorted awake, her eyes flying open with military sharpness. "Catch is," she rasped, stretching her bruised neck, My brother didn't just breed show dogs. He trained K-9 units for the police. Rex was supposed to be his next candidate. She fished a dog tag from her pocket, the same one Emma had shown Tom in the bunker. This isn't just ID, it's his service number. Tom's mind raced. You're saying Rex is police property? Was, Martha corrected. The department wrote him off after Derek stole him. But if he can still perform... A slow, painful grin spread across her face. Then technically he's evidence in an ongoing criminal case. And guess who just got deputized as his temporary handler? The doors burst open again, this time revealing a harried-looking vet in blood-spattered scrubs. Tom was on his feet before the man could speak. Is he alive? The vet confirmed, peeling off his surgical cap. It was touch and go for a while. He lost a lot of blood, but German shepherds are tough. He hesitated, glancing at Martha. There's something you should see, though. The treatment room smelled of antiseptic and wet dog. Rex lay motionless on the stainless steel table, his flank rising and falling steadily beneath a nest of tubes and bandages. An IV drip fed into his front leg, the fur around it shaved to pink skin. But it wasn't the medical equipment that caught Tom's attention. It was what the vet was pointing at on Rex's shaved belly. A tattoo. Small, faded, but unmistakable. K9729. Martha let out a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. I'll be damned, he still had it. She turned to the confused vet. This dog's a retired police K9. That changes his legal status entirely. The vet blinked. I'll need to verify. Already done. Lisa pulled out her phone, showing an email from the state police K9 unit. They confirmed the number. Rex, or rather K9 Officer Ajax, was reported stolen 2 years ago during a training exercise. Tom reached out, gently stroking Rex's ear. The dog didn't stir, his breathing deep and even under the anesthesia. Ajax, his real name. A working dog, not a fighter. No wonder he'd refused to kill in the ring. The vet exhaled sharply. This complicates things. If he's police property, he's not property at all. Tom interrupted, surprising himself. He's a hero, and he deserves to choose where he belongs. A weak tail thump made them all look down. Rex's eyes were open, just barely, and fixed on Tom. His tongue lolled in the ghost of that strange smile he'd given Derek before all hell broke loose. Then, with obvious effort, he lifted his head and nudged Tom's hand with his nose before collapsing back onto the table, exhausted. The vet's stern expression softened. Well, I suppose that settles that. Martha clapped Tom on the back hard enough to make him wince. Congratulations, kid, you just got yourself a partner. Outside, the first light of dawn painted the sky in pale gold. Somewhere in the city, Derek Marshall sat in a jail cell, his empire in ashes. In the kennels down the hall, Number 7 and the other rescued dogs waited for their second chance. And here, in this quiet room, a stolen police dog finally came home. Tom rested his forehead against Rex's, breathing in the familiar scent of wet dog and antiseptic. Welcome back, Ajax, he whispered. The tail thumped again. Just once. The police K9 harness felt foreign in Tom's hands, the stiff leather unyielding as he adjusted the straps for the 10th time that morning. Ajax, stood patiently on the training field, his ears pricked forward with an alertness that hadn't been there before the surgery. The bullet wound had healed into a pink scar beneath his fur, but the deeper scars, the ones left by Derek's cruelty, were fading day by day. Quit fidgeting, Martha grumbled from the sidelines, her arms crossed over her chest. The bruises from the compound raid had turned an impressive array of colors, but nothing could dull the sharpness in her eyes. Either put it on him or don't, but make up your mind before the captain gets here. Tom shot her a glare, but didn't argue. 3 weeks had passed since the raid, 3 weeks of legal battles and paperwork and tense meetings with the police department. Derek's trial was pending, but the evidence from the burned compound, what little survived, had been enough to keep him behind bars. The other rescued dogs were scattered across no-kill shelters and rehabilitation programs, though Martha kept tabs on everyone. And Ajax? Ajax had a job to do. Tom took a deep breath and knelt, holding out the harness. "Ready, boy?" The German shepherd didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and ducked his head, allowing Tom to fasten the straps with only a slight tremble when the buckles clicked. Training had come back to him like muscle memory. The scent drills, the obedience commands, even the takedown maneuvers. It was as if 2 years of hell had been compressed into a bad dream. And now he was waking up. "Looking good, Officer Hayes." Captain Grayson's voice made Tom straighten instinctively. The grizzled K-9 unit commander surveyed them with an unreadable expression, his clipboard tucked under one arm. "Dog remembers his training better than you do by the looks of it." Tom's face burned, but he kept his mouth shut. The temporary deputization was a courtesy, one he couldn't afford to lose. Not when it was the only thing standing between Ajax and a return to the evidence locker, or worse, retirement. Grayson circled them slowly. "Standard probationary period is 6 months. You'll ride with Officer Dunham until you're cleared for solo patrols. The dog stays in department kennels when not on duty." His gaze flicked to Martha. "Unless you've got another loophole up your sleeve." Martha smiled sweetly. "Wouldn't dream of it, Captain." The radio on Grayson's belt crackled to life. "All units, burglary in progress at 1427 Maple. Suspects possibly armed." Tom's pulse jumped. Maple Street was just 5 blocks away. Grayson studied Ajax, then Tom. "Well, you want to be cops? Prove it." The patrol car smelled of stale coffee and gun oil. The backseat cage separating Tom from Ajax as Dunham, a taciturn officer with a shaved head and a perpetual frown, navigated the midday traffic with practiced ease. "First rule," Dunham said, not taking his eyes off the road. "The dog's a tool, not a pet. You get attached, you get dead." Tom bit back a retort. He'd seen the way Dunham's fingers had lingered on Ajax's head when he thought no one was looking. The radio crackled again. Suspects fleeing on foot toward Riverside Park. Caucasian male, red hoodie, Hispanic female, black jacket. Dunham hit the lights and siren, the car lurching forward as tires squealed around a corner. Riverside Park was Ajax's old stomping ground, the place where Derek's men had chased them, where Martha had made her stand. The irony wasn't lost on Tom. They skidded to a stop near the park entrance, Dunham already barking orders, "Hayes, take the dog and cut through the east trail. I'll flush them toward you." Tom didn't argue. He released Ajax from the cage, the dog hitting the ground already alert, his nose working the air. The harness felt different now, right, in a way Tom couldn't explain. "Find," he whispered, and Ajax was off like a shot, his nose to the ground as they plunged into the trees. The park was eerily quiet, the usual joggers and dog walkers scared off by the police presence. Somewhere to their left, shouts echoed. Dunham and the others closing in. Ajax never hesitated, his body a taut line of focus, as he zigzagged between the trees, following a scent only he could detect. Then Tom heard it, the snap of a branch, the muffled curse, a flash of red between the oaks. Ajax's growl was barely audible, but the message was clear. Found them. Tom unclipped the leash. Apprehend. What happened next was a blur. Ajax exploded forward, a black and tan missile honed by breeding and training. The suspect in the red hoodie turned just in time to see 70 pounds of muscle and teeth launch at his chest. They went down in a tangle of limbs and snarling, the man's scream cutting off abruptly as Ajax's teeth closed, carefully, precisely, around the padded sleeve he'd been trained to target. Tom was on them in seconds, his knee in the suspect's back as he cuffed him. "Good boy," he breathed, and Ajax's tail wagged once, sharply, before he resumed his watchful stance. Dunham arrived moments later, dragging the second suspect by the collar. His eyebrows rose at the sight of Ajax standing guard over his prisoner. Maybe the dog's not completely useless after all. Back at the precinct, the adrenaline high faded into exhaustion. Paperwork needed filing, reports needed writing. But for now, Tom sat on the floor of the K-9 locker room, Ajax's head heavy in his lap as the dog dozed. Martha found them there an hour later, her boots scuffing the concrete. "Heard you caught your first bad guy." Tom grinned up at her. "We did." She tossed him a set of keys. "Then you'll be needing these." The keys landed with a jingle, house keys by the look of them. Tom frowned. "What's this?" "Your new place," Martha said, as if it were obvious. "Department policy says the dog stays in kennels. Doesn't say where the handler has to sleep." Her smirk was all teeth. "Welcome to the sanctuary, kid." Ajax lifted his head, sniffing the air as if he already knew, as if he'd always known. Home. The courtroom air smelled of lemon polish and stale coffee as Tom adjusted his tie for the 10th time. Ajax sat at perfect attention beside him, his K-9 vest a silent rebuttal to Derek's claims of ownership. Across the aisle, Derek smirked from the defense table, his spiderweb tattoos peeking above his orange jumpsuit. When the prosecutor displayed photos of the branded dogs, a juror gasped. Derek's smirk faded as Martha took the stand, her voice steady as she described finding her brother's body in the shelter ashes. But the real blow came when Ajax was called to demonstrate his training. At Tom's quiet command, the German Shepherd performed flawlessly. Obedience drills, evidence recovery, even calmly ignoring Derek's hissed attempts to distract him. The verdict came swiftly, guilty on all counts. As deputies led Derek away, he locked eyes with Tom. "This isn't over," he mouthed. Ajax's low growl vibrated through Tom's hand, where it rested on the dog's back. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the sanctuary's fields as Tom watched Ajax race through the tall grass with number 7 limping playfully behind. The once terrified pit bull now bore a shiny new collar, his wounds healed both inside and out. Martha leaned against the fence beside Tom, sipping her coffee as the other rescued dogs barked greetings from their kennels. "You did good, kid," she said, nodding toward Ajax. The German Shepherd paused to nudge Tom's hand before bounding off again, his K-9 vest swapped for an ordinary collar, his service days officially over now that Derek's appeals had been denied. Tom smiled as Ajax herded the smaller dogs with gentle nudges, his protective instincts now a gift rather than a burden. The scars remained, but the pain behind them had faded. Moral lesson: cruelty may leave its mark, but love always has the final say. Every broken creature, human or animal, deserves a chance to heal, to trust again. And sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is to let ourselves be saved.